Good evening and welcome to our virtual Committee of Adjustment meeting. Now on your screen, you'll see members of our Committee of Adjustment. Behind the scenes, we have many staff members with us this evening who have worked hard to make tonight's meeting possible. Our Secretary Treasurer is Lindsay Stamen and our Clerk is Derek O'Shea. And together they are running the Zoom platform from behind the scenes, and you will be hearing them chime in from time to time. So the agenda and the schedules for the meeting have been posted on Dash on the city's website. If you don't have those documents and you'd like to follow along, feel free to access them now. So we have 4 items on the agenda this evening, and I'd like to share with you the format that I'm going to be using as we navigate through each application. I'm going to start by introducing an applicant. I'll have them add anything further to the information we have before us. If you have nothing further to add, then just simply say so. Next, I'll invite members of the committee to ask questions of either the applicant or their agent. And afterwards, I'll open the public portion of the meeting. So it's at this point in the meeting, if you're a member of the public and you wish to make a comment or you have a question, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. What we will do is we'll physically be recording your comments and questions, and it's only after I close the public portion of the meeting will we address the public comments and questions. We will be calling 3 times for public comments. And if you do wish to make a public comment, we'll be limiting you to 5 minutes. Next, I'll invite the applicant or the staff to address those public comments, after which we go back to the committee, we make a motion, and we deliberate on the application. At that point, if you're the applicant or the agent, you're free to leave the meeting. And then we just rinse and we repeat. I'll be using the same format for every application this evening. Now, if you have a particular interest in any application this evening and you'd like to receive written notice of tonight's decision, then please send an email to our Secretary Treasurer, Lindsay Stamen. Her email address is lsthamann@cityofkingston.ca. Be sure to include your name, your address, and the file number of the application, and she'll be sure to include you in the correspondence. So that's pretty much about it. So at this point, I'd like to call on Derek, our committee clerk, to confirm quorum, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, and I can confirm there is quorum. We do have regrets this evening from Vincent Chinani, Blaine Fudge, Greg Lightfoot, and Jordan Tekanos-Levy. In the meeting tonight from staff are Lindsay Stamen, Secretary Treasurer and Intermediate Planner, Ingi Kim, Planner, Megan Robideau, Intermediate Planner, Nikki Van Voot, Planner, James Barr, Manager of Development Approvals, and Julia Jansman, who is the meeting host and committee clerk. Additionally, we have 5 agents and or applicants in attendance and 3 members of the public. And I turn it back to you.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so I guess the first item on our agenda will be to call the meeting to order, and I'll call the meeting to order at 5:33 p.m. Committee members, can we look for a motion to approve our agenda with the addendum and with the additional piece of correspondence this afternoon? So moved by Paul and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's carried. Thank you. Now we're on to the confirmation of the minutes of the January 17th meeting. We've all received a copy of them. We've had a chance to review. So I'm going to have a motion to accept the minutes. So moved by Somnath and seconded by Paul. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's carried. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? And I see none. I have none as well. There are no delegations. We have no requests for deferral, and we have no returning deferred items. So the first piece of new business we have this evening is an application for 276 Helen Street. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Our first application tonight is for minor variance at 276 Helen Street. The file number associated with the application is D13-049-2021. Megan Robideau will give a presentation on behalf of the city for this application.
Great, thank you very much. Welcome, Megan.
Okay, thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Are you able to hear me okay?
Absolutely, yeah, perfect, thank you.
Excellent. As Lindsay said, my name is Megan Robideau. I'm the planner who's been processing this application for minor variance for 276 Helen Street. The purpose and effect of the minor variance application is to demolish the existing one-story single detached dwelling and redevelop the subject property with a 3-story multiple residential building containing 8 dwelling units. Next slide, please. The property is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned multiple family dwelling B3 zone in zoning bylaw 8499, which permits multiple family dwellings containing 3 or more units to a maximum density of 123 units per hectare. Next slide. The subject property is situated on the west side of Helen Street. The property is currently occupied by a 1-story single detached dwelling and is located adjacent to a variety of residential uses, including single detached dwellings and low-rise apartment buildings, ranging from 1 to 3.5 stories in height. Next slide, please. The proposed development will provide 1 one-bedroom unit, 1 two-bedroom unit, 5 three-bedroom units, and 1 barrier-free 2-bedroom unit, resulting in a total of 20 bedrooms across 8 dwelling units for a net density of 111 units per hectare. Vehicle access is proposed to be maintained off Helen Street to provide access to 5 parking spaces in the rear yard, including 1 type A accessible space. 8 secure bicycle parking spaces are also proposed beneath the stairway in the rear yard. An accessibility ramp is proposed on the south side of the building and in the front yard to provide access from the rear parking area and from the street to the front entrance of the building. Shared amenity space is provided in the rear yard, and an indoor common amenity area is also proposed in the basement. Upper level balconies will also provide some private amenity space to those units on the 2nd and 3rd stories. Next slide. So here we can see a conceptual rendering of the proposed built form, which proposes an articulated facade with some variation in building material and minimal side-facing windows. Details such as building materials, landscaping, lighting, and garbage storage will be finalized through the site plan control process, which the applicant has recently initiated. Next slide. Variances are requested to seek relief for a minimum front yard and projection into a front yard. The existing dwelling on the subject property is a front yard of about 3.7 meters, which is less than the proposed front yard of 5.8 meters. The proposed front yard aligns with the front yards of neighboring properties to the north along Helen Street, which will help to achieve a continuous street wall. No negative visual impacts on the streetscape are anticipated as a result of the requested reduction in minimum front yard and front yard projection. Next slide. Variances are also requested to seek relief for minimum side yard and aggregate side yard. A wider side yard is proposed on the north side of the property, where the abutting dwelling is located closer to the lot line, and a narrower side yard is proposed on the south side of the property, where the neighboring dwelling is separated from the lot line by a driveway. It should also be noted that many buildings located along Helen Street and in the surrounding neighborhood predate the enactment of zoning bylaw 8499 and do not comply with the side yard and aggregate side yard requirements of the B3 zone. The proposed development is designed to mitigate the potential for intrusive overlook by ensuring that as few windows as possible face the side yard. Next slide, please. Finally, variances are requested to seek relief for off-street vehicle parking spaces and their dimensions. The proposed development provides 0.6 parking spaces per unit, or 5 parking spaces, where the zoning bylaw requires 1.4 parking spaces per unit, or 12 parking spaces. A parking study was prepared by Forefront Engineering in support of the requested reduction in parking spaces. The study concluded that the requested relief is appropriate considering the site's proximity to major amenities, transit, pedestrian and cycling facilities, and the observed parking supply and demand characteristics in the neighborhood. The property is located within a 600-meter walking distance of the Kingston Center, where multiple transit stops can be accessed. And the site is also located within walking distance of commercial employment and open space uses. In regards to parking stall dimensions, the proposed development provides parking spaces that are 2.6 meters wide and 5.2 meters long. The reduced parking stall size will comfortably accommodate most vehicles and is consistent with the parking stall dimensions used across the city in recent years. The reduced parking stall dimensions will also help to maximize the site's efficiency while continuing to meet the needs of users and maintaining the functionality of the parking area. Further, it should be noted that the design standards for the required type A accessible parking space will be maintained. Next slide, please. Pursuant to the requirements of the Planning Act, a notice of statutory public meeting was provided by advertisement in the form of signs posted on the subject property 10 days in advance of this meeting. In addition, notices were sent by mail to 25 property owners within 60 meters of the subject property, and a courtesy notice was placed in the Kingston WIG standard. One piece of public correspondence has been received regarding this application, which was included in this evening's addendum. Next slide. The application has been found to be consistent with the provincial policy statement, conform to all applicable policies of the official plan, and is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The proposed variances meet all 4 tests under subsection 45(1) of the Planning Act. Approval of this application will facilitate the development of a 3-story, 8-unit building in an area that is already zoned to allow multi-residential development, and that will add density into a neighborhood supported by transit and active transportation facilities, near employment and commercial uses, and that is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The proposal represents good land use planning and is being recommended for approval, subject to the proposed conditions. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the application.
Great, thanks very much, Megan. All right, so can I now call on the applicant or their agent to identify yourselves by name and address, please?
Good evening, and through you, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, fine, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Yuko Leclerc. I'm a planner with Foten Planning and Design. I'm here appearing on behalf of the applicant.
Good, and is there anything further you wish to add to the application this evening?
Thank you. No, I've had a chance to review the recommendation report and agree with staff's recommendation. I have also received the piece of public correspondence.
Great, thank you. Okay, committee members, do you have any questions for Mr. Leclerc? Yes, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question concerning the aggregate minimum side yard sort of variance number 3. Perhaps staff could put up the schematics of the building and the lot, and possibly you could explain to us what sort of mitigating measures are being put in to sort of protect the privacy of the neighbors as well.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, I would ask that Mr. O'Shea, if possible, if you could pull up slide 4 of the presentation. Perfect. So I believe this would have been the conceptual drawing you were referring to. Perfect.
Right.
Okay, great. So the property or the siting of the proposed building on the property is such that it's furthest removed as possible from neighboring dwellings. So the property to the north is situated closest to its south side lot line. So there's some separation there in terms of the location of the driveway. And then the property abutting the subject property to the south is situated also closest to its southmost side lot line. So there's also a degree of separation with the existing driveway on the property to the south. And then in addition to that, we've worked with the applicant to minimize as much as possible side facing windows that are proposed on the building itself. And in addition to that, the proposed building is within the maximum height of the B3 zone. So that also gives us an indication that we wouldn't anticipate adverse impacts in terms of overlook on abutting properties.
Okay, thank you.
But I'd certainly invite the applicant to add anything further to that if they wish.
Okay, any other questions of committee members? Yes, Paul. Yeah.
Am I still unmuted?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, good. It was really around variance number 4. I did have a chance to read the parking study, so I do appreciate receiving that. And I understand that we are going to be going with, I believe, 5 parking spaces. And I'm just wondering from the applicant's perspective, do they perceive any parking issues with tenants? Parking is always an issue from my perspective. And I'm just wondering what's their sort of measures that they're putting in place to prevent parking issues as well.
Mr. Chair, the applicant is providing the maximum number of bicycle parking spaces at 8 to offset any transportation needs that residents might have in the building, in addition to parking. They're also providing 5 spaces, which is sort of better than the 0.5 ratio that is often seen in multi-unit buildings in this area, as a deliberate measure to provide a little bit more parking than they anticipate the residents of the building needing.
And I did read this study, so I thought that was helpful. So you are proposing 0.6 spaces per unit, if I recall reading. Okay. Okay, no, that answers my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? No? Okay, so at this point, I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening who wish to speak to the application for 276 Helen Street? If so, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. All right, and I do see one has popped up here, and I recognize Mr. Chinnery. If you'd like to unmute yourself and just state your name and address for the record, please. Well, you kind of zoned out just for a sec. We can't hear you. No audio. No, I see your microphone is, there's a microphone level, but we just can't hear you at all. There's nothing coming through. Derek, is there a phone number that perhaps Mr. Chinnery can call?
Yes, so what I might suggest is Mr. Chinnery can, if he can hear us, attempt to log out and log back into the meeting to see if that solves his problems. If not, within his invitation, there is call-in information using a phone number and the meeting ID.
Okay, sure. So then in the meantime, what I might do is use the opportunity to make additional calls for public comments. Is anybody else with us this evening who wishes to speak to the application for Helen Street? Raise your virtual hand in Zoom. I only see 2 other people in the gallery, but I'll call sort of a third time. Do we have any members with us this evening who wish to speak to the application for 276 Helen Street? Raise your virtual hand in Zoom. So I see none. I have that out of the way. So we'll just wait for Mr. Chinnery to log out of the meeting and then log back into the meeting if you can.
Mr. Chair, perhaps it would be advisable to just take a 2 to 3 minute recess to allow this to happen. And I can also try and correspond with Mr. Chinnery as well.
Okay, committee members were available to that?
I think he's unmuted now, Mr. Chair, so.
Yes, I had interference between 2 different sources of my microphone, sorry.
We can hear you fine now. So Mr. Chinnery, can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Stephen Chinnery. I live at 272 Helen Street.
Okay.
I've lived here since 1983, so 39 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry. Paul brought up a question about parking. Parking has always been an issue on this street because of the multitude of multi-residential dwellings, if you like. West side of the street is no parking and the east side is parking. There isn't very much parking available. And even in the wintertime, there are cars parking on the road. So I just like to indicate that is an issue, regardless of the new development. It's been an issue for a number of years.
Okay. All right, anything further?
Yes, if I wouldn't mind, I wonder if there's going to be an effect on the municipal water pressure in the area. It is a very older area of the city, so the infrastructure is likely not up to standards of today's, so adding another 8 units, will that affect the water pressure?
Okay.
And I'm particularly worried about the fire hydrant as well.
In what respect for the fire hydrant?
Well, if the 8 units affect the water pressure, what does that do for the fire hydrant? Because we have had 2 multi-residential fires on this street in the last couple of years. So.
Okay, good.
And one other, if you don't mind.
Yes, absolutely.
I wonder if there's been a study about the effect on groundwater in the area. Because of the nature of the street and the proximity to the main street, most of the properties in this area do get water in the springtime. Now, 276, does share some of that groundwater with myself and my backdoor neighbor. So by paving over 276, how is that going to affect everybody else? I wonder.
When you say groundwater, do you mean basement infiltration?
Luckily, that's not a problem with me. It's just the backyard.
Backyard. Oh, so you're sort of like stormwater runoff.
Yeah, or spring melt kind of thing. Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks for that clarification.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. Okay, and I'll call one last final time. Do we have any other members of the public wishing to speak to the application for 276 Helen Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. I see none, so I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting now and turn the meeting back over to either the applicant, the agent, or staff to address some of these questions. I see, Megan, you've got your hand raised and happy to hear you. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to address those questions in regards to municipal water service and drainage.
Okay.
So Utilities Kingston was circulated on the zoning, minor variance application, and confirmed that there is existing capacity in terms of municipal servicing, including water service, to support the proposed development. So no concerns on that end had been flagged through technical review.
Okay.
And then in terms of stormwater, as a part of the submission requirements to the application, the applicant was required to provide a stormwater management report, which was reviewed internally by engineering services, and they did not find any sort of outstanding concerns in that regard. So the site has been designed to appropriately manage stormwater.
Okay, great. And there was the issue about parking on the roads, or just I think maybe the spin-off from that was reducing the level of on-site parking might put further strain on parking in the area. Don't know.
Yeah, if I think if Mr. Chinnery had a particular question in regards to that, I'd be happy to maybe provide a more detailed response. I can say that I know the parking study did provide an assessment that included consideration of the utilization of on-street parking in the area. So that was something that was incorporated and considered through that submitted parking study.
Right, and I did read that in the parking study as well, that it says that the on-street parking is kind of underutilized for a lot of the time. So I saw that as being addressing that. Okay, thanks very much for that. Okay, I guess I'll turn it now back to the committee for a motion. Committee members, yeah, so moved by Paul and seconded by Somnath. There's only 2 ways to go there. Any discussion? No, so all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's unanimously carried. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Yes, you too. Thank you. Okay, the next application we have on our agenda is for 96 Yonge Street. It looks like it's an application for permission. So Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for permission, file number D13078-2021 at 96 Yonge Street. Ingi Kim will give the presentation on behalf of the city for this application.
Great, thank you. Ingi, welcome.
Good evening and happy Valentine's Day. Can you hear me okay, Mr. Chair?
Very well, thank you.
Perfect. Through you, Mr. Chair, this application is for permission at 96 Yonge Street to allow the existing accessory bakery use as a standalone operation, together with an existing legal non-conforming tavern use on site. Next slide, please. So the subject property is located at 96 Yonge Street with road frontages on Grange Street and Yonge Street. The site is currently developed with an existing legal non-conforming tavern and surface parking area with vehicular access from Grange Street. The subject property is designated Main Street Commercial in the official plan and zoned 1 family dwelling and 2 family dwelling A5 in zoning bylaw number 8499. Next slide, please. The current bakery use has been in operation since 2017 as an accessory use to the Portsmouth Tavern, and this application is seeking for permission to allow the existing bakery use as an independent operation. There will be no visual nor functional change to the site as no modification to the existing building are proposed. Next slide, please. The floor plan shown here were part of the approved building permit application from 2017 to allow the second kitchen to accommodate a bakery use as an accessory to the existing tavern. The drawing annotated as proposed floor layout reflects the existing condition today. So while no further modification is proposed, a building permit will be required for the change of use as an independent operation and fire separation between the 2 uses. Next slide, please. With respect to public consultation, a public notice sign was posted. A notice was mailed to 42 property owners, and notification was also made available in the Kingston Wig Standard. To date, we received 2 public comments in support of the application, and I believe they have been added to the addendum. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the requested permission to allow a bakery use together with an existing legal non-conforming tavern use on subject property meets all tests under the Planning Act and the additional considerations contained within the city's official plan. There will be no visual nor functional change to the site as no modification to the existing building are proposed. And therefore, the application is being recommended for approval subject to proposed conditions. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions about this application.
Great, thank you very much. So at this point, can I please call on the applicant or their agent to identify yourself by name and address for the record, please?
Hi, my name's Emma Stuckey. I'm a planner at IBI Group.
Hi, Emma.
And we are assisting the owners of 96 Yonge Street. Our address is 650 Dalton Avenue.
Great. Do you have anything further to add to the application?
No, nothing further to add. NG covered it all.
Great, thank you. So committee members, do you have any questions for Emma or staff? Yes, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, servicing clients for the bakery, is it going to be out of the back of the building through a counter window sort of operation as it appears to be now? I'm just wondering if that's the case.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. My understanding is that the bakery would operate off the entrance off of the side street. And then the exact details of the operation would be sort of worked through the business application license. They do require building permits, again, for the licensing and to get additional separation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions of the applicant or the agent, staff? No? Okay, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening to speak, wishing to speak to the application for 96 Yonge Street, which is the Portsmouth Tavern? Raise your virtual hand in Zoom. I only see one person in the attendee section who is the perhaps related to the applicant, but I'll call again. Do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 96 Yonge Street? Raise your virtual hand in Zoom. Yes, we recognize Spencer Barr. And your microphone is just muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add. I think it was unintended for it to.
Oh, sorry, excuse me, just Mr. Barr, if I could just have you state your name and address for the record.
Oh, sure. Spencer Barr, and
Yep.
my address is 197 Simmons Road in Odessa, Ontario.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think the initial purpose was to be just a commercial kitchen, a site for me to bake the bread safely. But, you know, as the public interest grew and people were knocking on the doors and windows, it grew into what it was today. We do service customers through the back door. We did start initially through the window, and now they do come in through the physical door into the bakery. But I don't have much more to add other than that.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. All right, and I'll call one third and final time. Do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 96 Yonge Street? Raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And I see none. So I'll close the public portion of the meeting and we'll come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Somnath and seconded by Paul. Any discussion? No, it's all in favor. Raise your physical hand. And that's unanimously carried. Thanks very much. All right, the next application we have is an application for permission, 762 River Styx Lane. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for permission at 762 River Styx Lane. The file number is D13074-2021. Ingi Kim is also the planner assigned to this application.
Great. Welcome again.
Good evening again, and
Yeah.
through you, Mr. Chair. This application is for permission at 762 River Styx Lane to relocate and enlarge a pre-existing legal non-conforming dwelling further away from the water. Next slide, please. So the subject property is located at 762 River Styx Lane, abutting Rideau Canal. The subject property is in River Styx Co-op, where there are several legal non-conforming recreational and residential buildings on a large parcel of land. The subject property is designated prime agricultural area and environmental protection area in the official plan and zoned restricted rural A1 in zoning bylaw number 32-74. Next slide, please. So the proposed relocation and reconstruction of the pre-existing dwelling will result in a new dwelling with a slightly larger building footprint and increased setback from the shoreline. So that the table on the slide compares the water setback, building footprint size, and height of the pre-existing and the proposed dwelling. Next slide, please. So the proposed new dwelling will be located outside of the EPA designated area, more than 30 meters away from the high water mark, increasing conformity to the policies of the official plan. The increased setback will provide a buffer of undisturbed soil and vegetation along the shoreline, which will help to filter runoff, prevent soil erosion, and provide wildlife habitats. Next slide, please. The proposed relocation and enlargement of the pre-existing use on the subject site is compatible with an abutting recreational and residential uses, as well as the character of the area that has been established on site. And the proposed dwelling will be built on a foundation that is approximately 130 square meter, and the dwelling is proposed to be approximately 7.8 meters in height. And also, Mr. Chair and committee members, I would like to turn your attention to page 74 of the report. So after the report was finalized, the applicant has indicated that there was a minor error on the floor plan.
Okay.
The length of the foundation on the north and south side should read 46 feet, not
44.
rather than 44 feet.
Okay.
So that's a 2 feet difference. This change does not increase or decrease the conformity of the proposal to the official plan nor the zoning bylaw 32-74.
Okay.
And the site plan attached to the draft notice of decision will ensure that the new dwelling will be located at approximately 45 meters away from the water.
Great. Okay.
Next slide, please. With respect to public consultation, a public notice sign was posted, a notice was mailed to 41 property owners, a notification was made available in Kingston week standard. To date, planning services received a couple of general inquiries about the application, and no official public comment has been received. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the requested permission to relocate and reconstruct a pre-existing dwelling meets all tests under the Planning Act and the additional considerations contained within the city's official plan. And therefore, the application is being recommended for approval, subject to proposed conditions. Thank you again. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to call on the applicant or their agent to identify yourself by name and address, please.
Hello, I'm Bill Braun. I live at 762 River Styx Lane.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Braun. Is there anything further you want to add to the application before us this evening?
No, Ingy has covered it quite nicely. Thank you.
Great. All right. So committee members, do you have any questions for Mr. Braun or for staff? No, I have none either. So I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 762 River Styx Lane? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. Is anybody with us this evening to speak to the application for 762 River Styx Lane? Raise your virtual hand in Zoom. Do we have any panelists with us who wish to speak to the application for 762 River Styx Lane? Please raise your virtual hand. So seeing none, I'll turn it back over to the committee for a motion. So moved by Paul and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's unanimously carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so next application on the agenda would be number 8D, which is an application for minor variance, 1317 Greenwood Park. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance at 1317 Greenwood Park Drive, file number D13-071-2021. Nikki Van Butt is the planner assigned to this application.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Nikki.
Hello, good evening. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, very well. Thank you. Very clear.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone, and happy Valentine's Day, as Ingy had already echoed. But this evening, I'll be discussing the minor variance application presented before you is for 1317 Greenwood Park Drive. The purpose and effect of this application is to remove the existing rear yard deck and steps and to construct a new 47.76 square meter elevated deck and 4.80 square meter steps, a total of 52.55 square meters, located at the rear of the existing residential single detached home. Next slide, please. So in order to facilitate the proposed development, the applicant is seeking a variance of 22.55 square meters in order to increase the maximum permitted deck size for a structure more than 1.2 meters above finished grade from 30 square meters to 52.55 square meters. It is important to note that the area includes the deck and steps. Next slide, please. The property is currently developed with a 2-story single detached dwelling and attached garage at the end of a cul-de-sac within a residential community and is in close proximity to Butternut Creek Park. The subject is designated as low density residential and environmental protection area in the official plan. It is zoned special R4-5 under zoning bylaw 32-74. The property abuts a residential lot to the north and west. And next slide, please. This is the site plan for the subject property. So the applicant is proposing to reconstruct a new larger deck as stated previously along the rear of the existing 2-story single-family detached house. It is anticipated that the proposed development will have no impact on the existing streetscape as a result of the orientation and location in the rear yard of the building. Next slide, please. So ultimately, the minor variance is triggered due to the proposed deck height of approximately 8.10 feet, 2.71 meters. This is the same height as the existing deck and steps. It's just a larger size, resulting in more prescriptive measures being required in order to ensure overlook and privacy concerns are mitigated. So the proposed rear yard deck provides new opportunity for growth and investment within Kingston in a manner that would ensure compatible development and land use. And this type of development is consistent within the built form of existing rear yard decks found in surrounding residential properties along Greenwood Park Drive. And the scale and design of the proposed development appears to be compatible with the surrounding uses. So next slide, please. With respect to public consultation, signs were posted on the subject property 10 days in advance to the meeting. Notices were sent by mail to the adjacent property owners within a 60-meter radius, and a courtesy notice was placed in the Kingston WIG standard. So to date, only one formal public comment has been received and was included in this evening's addendum. And next slide, please. With respect to our recommendation, the requested variance meets the general intent and purpose of the official plan and the zoning bylaw. The proposal is desirable for the appropriate development and use of land, and as such, the proposed application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act. So approval of this application will permit the construction of an elevated deck at the rear of the existing single detached house. So thank you for your time, and that concludes my presentation. I look forward to addressing any questions or concerns during the discussion period.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Nikki. So can I please call on the applicant or their agent at this point to identify yourself by name and address, please? Yes, Edward.
I am coming.
Okay, that's fine. Take your time.
Okay, there we go. Yes, my name is Ed Padviskis. I am the owner and the applicant for the request for this variance to construct a larger deck in my backyard. I live at I also live at the site at 1317 Greenwood Park Drive.
Thanks. And is there anything further you want to add to the application?
No, Nikki summed it up beautifully, and the intent as well.
Great, thank you. So committee members, do you have any questions for Mr. Padvikas? No, I don't have any either. So I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 1317 Greenwood Park Drive? And Derek, did we have anybody registered to speak to this at all?
No, we do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I'll close the public portion of the meeting and we'll come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Paul and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that would be carried. Thanks very much. Carried unanimously. Okay, so that's that. So our new business is done. So moving on in the agenda, we have no motions this evening, no notices of motion. There's no other business, and we had additional pieces of correspondence that we've already been through. Everybody's received that. The date of the next meeting is Monday, March 21st. So I guess that's 5 weeks away at 5:30 p.m. So we just need a motion to adjourn. So moved by Paul and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your hands. And that's carried. And so we're meeting adjourned at 6:13 p.m. Thanks everybody, and happy Valentine's Day.